Hey, everybody, what is up? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Sports Vibe, which is, especially during football season, a weekly look at sports, what's going on. But we're sticking NFL style for another week. Always good to have Brendan Whithead on the show. What is up, Brendan?
How you doing, man? I'm excited. This football season. Like every season, it just keeps happening. It keeps drawing me in so quickly. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's already been a very intriguing season, and we've only been in 2 games. So, what caught your eye? You know what? Tell people who you are. Come on, I gotta do that first. Tell you. You gotta tell them who you are.
Well, I'm a sports personality. I do some freelance writing. In addition, I'm on a sports radio show every weekly, affectionately known as Research 96.5 and 99.3 FM if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area. Also 620 AM The Buzz. In addition to doing this, I also have a podcast that's available on iTunes called He's the Producer, I'm the Host. That's called He's the Producer, I'm the Host. And it's also available on Podomatic.
Spreading that. I like it. Getting on more platforms. Nice. Very nice.
Yes,
all right, let's go back to last week, NFL. What caught your eye?
Well, I mean, like it's so early in the season that you already want to start pontificating about what the end of the season is going to look like. It happens every year, and after 1 week, you start trying to figure some stuff out. But after 2, you're still on the precipice of really figuring out what these teams are doing. Like Johnny Manziel, I mean, he came in, started game 2 after the starting quarterback went down with concussion, and look, it got his first NFL win, and a lot of people have been on edge about whether or not he was going to be able to do it. Get game to game and play to play is one thing, but he seemed to have that big play ability. Even if it's not, we saw it at college. He's able to go off schedule and do some things. Travis Benjamin, the wide receiver, who he's completed 3 passes of over 30 yards and touchdowns for. He started to even emerge. When you look at that Cleveland team, you're never really looking at all the stars they have on offense. Defensively, they're a lot better than they are offensively. But it kind of makes sense that they would want to have Manziel there because he is a playmaker. Now, they said that if McCown is healthy, that they will start him. He's gone through the concussion protocol. So right now it looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback. But that's just a fun thing to keep your eye on with all this talk about Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. It's cool to see that maybe Manziel is starting to pick up a little bit of steam as well.
Who do you think should be starting?
I think in that situation, I would go with Manziel. Now, look, there's also off the field stuff with Manziel in terms of he's gone through rehab and they're still trying to figure out exactly his maturity level away from the field. But I think, from all reports that he's a completely different guy is kind of what the larger thing is. So if they feel like he can handle it mentally, if he can handle it in terms of off the field stuff, I think you have to start him because there's not a lot of playmaking ability on that offense. And if they can find something in Manziel, because eventually you have to figure out what you got for that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering, the longer they wait, the longer it's going to take for them to find out, is he worth keeping or not?
Yeah, and you also don't want this to be a situation where you're just kind of perpetually just kind of holding your breath on what you have. You got to figure out whether or not, because remember, they just spent a first-round pick on him. So they've got to figure out what they're going to be doing moving forward and if they need to build their team around this guy because he's got different things that he does well than McCown, or if just scrap the whole thing and try something new. So I think that eventually they got to figure it out. But, I think that there probably still are some concerns about him off the field. Not necessarily that he's doing anything wrong, but that in terms of his maturity and whether or not he can handle being the starting quarterback for an NFL team.
True. There's so many. Okay, let's talk about Buffalo, New England.
Yeah, that was kind of the matchup that I was really looking forward to seeing the most because, Buffalo had been – not only had they been talking a big game about what they wanted to do in the AFC East, but they had walked in that first game. They come out, very impressive win against the Colts. And Tyrod Taylor was very, very good. Started something like 13-15, didn't turn the ball over. And then the Patriots came to town and, it kind of looked like the Patriots and the Bills again. Like part of is the Patriots have been – one of the NFL's best teams, but they've also been incredibly dominant in the AFC East. I mean, like they won something like 11 of the last 13 division championships, and it looks like they're going to roll to another one. I mean, it was classy. It was Tom Brady playing well, the defense being stout. It's going to be interesting seeing how the Bills respond to that, because it's one thing when, you come out and you surprise people and, all of a sudden this team is a little bit better than people thought. People, I think, have generally thought that Buffalo was going to be better, but not necessarily a playoff team. Now you start to hear those playoff whispers. Well, that means you're going to have to beat some of these quality opponents, and it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from this adversity early on in the season.
Yeah, I think it's called humble pie, so to speak, that they had it handed to them. And the real interesting thing about that is Buffalo was supposed to have such a great defense. They already had a great defense. Marshall Darius signs his new contract.
Right.
Rex Ryan, defensive guru, comes to town, and Patriots just stomped all over them.
Yeah, and this is kind of what the Patriots do. Like they win in a myriad of ways. Sometimes they'll run the ball down your throat. Sometimes they'll throw it 50 times a game. It's whatever ways they feel that they have an advantage, they'll exploit it. And it's getting kind of redundant, but it's the same old Patriots. Like after all the offseason, all the turmoil and everything like that, they just go about the business of winning.
Yeah, just like clockwork. Just like clockwork. Absolutely. Let's see whether anything else really stood out. What about, and this is, I guess, two more games. Well, let's talk about the Jets and the Colts. What is going on in Indianapolis?
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. Now I've been one of the more vocal guys that had kind of gone against Andrew Luck, not because of that he's a bad quarterback. He's obviously a very talented guy, has all the attributes, both tangibly and intangibly, that you want. It's just that he turns the ball over pretty frequently, and for whatever reason, people had already shipped his bus to Canton. That team was assumed to have gotten better on offense, and there's a lot of focus now on what exactly they've done. They added Andre Johnson, they added Frank Gore, and they picked up Dorsett in the first round. So you're supposed to get better on offense, you would think, with all those skill position upgrades, but it's really the offensive line that seemed to have really let them down moving forward. They haven't had a 100-yard rusher in a really long time. Andrew Luck got hit a ton last year, and so now some of the there's a little bit of finger pointing going on. If it's not Chuck Pagano, or if it's Andrew Luck, or if it's offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton, there's a lot of different stuff, and even the general manager for putting this collection of talent together. People are a little bit disappointed. Now, the Colts start off 0-2 last year. So this slow start isn't anything new for them. And we talked about the AFC East and that division. That's really the only thing that was saying, the fact that the AFC North is really not very good at all. They've been undefeated within the division for the last 2 years, and so they've been able to kind of roll out of bed and pick up 6 wins against the Titans and Jacksonville. So if they can continue that dominance in the division, you would think that they'd be able to right the ship. But there is a little bit of a panic going on, and keep this in mind as well. Chuck Pagano is on his last year of his deal.
Yeah, yep. That was a lot of talk before the season started, and it sounds that rumor has it that him and Jim Irsay don't get along 100%. So, and we all know about Mr. Irsay. He's an interesting cat.
He's definitely an interesting guy, and it's what's also interesting about this particular one. Not to stay on the Colts too long, but when Pagano got sick a couple years ago, Bruce Arians took over, now the head coach of the Cardinals, and they were still very good. Like they ended up going 10-6. They go to the playoffs, and then Pagano comes back, and it was a seamless transition. I do wonder sometimes if they peek over to Arizona, one of those 2-0 teams, and look at the head coaching job Arians is doing over there, and wonder if if maybe they let the better coach walk out the door. I've always thought that could maybe rear its head if there was ever some sort of problem with Pagano moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. Talk about some other games. I think, and I know you're going to spend a segment talking about 2-0 and 0-2 teams, so I'll keep it light. I'll save the Cowboys-Eagles game for last. Well, let's talk one more on top of that. Seahawks and the Packers. Revenge game for the Pack or what?
Absolutely. That they had circled that one in their calendars before the season even started. The rematch of the NFC title game. Obviously not. This doesn't mean as much as the NFC title game did, but I'm sure that they were extremely pleased to go and get that win. And, talking about the 0-2 teams, Seattle, Seattle's one of those 0-2 teams, 2 straight trips to the Super Bowl, 1 Super Bowl victory. Whether or not it's Kam Chancellor being gone, now he's finally returned, but whether or not it was him being gone or exactly what happened, everyone talks about Jimmy Graham, who they picked up with that trade with the New Orleans Saints, but they had to give up their center, and he was probably their best and most consistent offensive lineman in Max Unger. So, this isn't quite the same team. I know the characters look a lot very similar, but this is not quite the same team. I think they will eventually right the ship. But they've got to get more consistent offensively, and defensively they haven't really looked like the exact same team either. Not a ton of pass rush. That team really kind of needs to pick it up because that NFC West is a doozy.
Oh yeah, well Arizona's off to a flying start, so and to be you don't want to fall too far behind in that division because it can be very costly. So then let's go to the highlighted game of last weekend, Philadelphia and Dallas. So many scenarios during the game and post game. I thought what outside of Romo getting injured, the spot that really caught me was when Philly was, I think it was in the 3rd or 4th quarter, they were near the Dallas goal line, couldn't get the ball in after 3 tries, and the camera had DeMarco Murray, and the look on his face was utter disgust. He just couldn't believe that.
And people are going to, Chip Kelly's kind of made himself an easy target here, right? Because he did he had all these different moves. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy. I'm going to get rid of this star. I'm going to get rid of this star. Because the assumption was that with his system, he could win with anybody. Hey, I've got a Pro Bowl quarterback in Nick Foles, but I'm going to trade him for Sam Bradford, who – hasn't, even when he's been healthy, which has been infrequently, hasn't really set the world on fire. It's pretty much always been kind of a mediocre and inconsistent quarterback. And so now you're seeing the exact same thing starting to happen here. And, you're 0-2 after winning double digits your first two seasons. And maybe now there's the whispers of, hey, were you winning with your guys or were you winning with Andy Reid's guys? And this is something that Chip Kelly wanted. He wanted that player operations power. He wanted to be able to pick up guys. Okay, well, this is what you run because there's no, hey, these guys aren't the ones I wanted. No, you have complete control. You have complete autonomy. And, maybe he's reaping some of the benefits of some of his poor decision making.
What do you think about the loss of Romo and how will that impact the Dallas Cowboys?
That's huge. I mean, obviously, Dez Bryant going down earlier was big for him, but the feeling I kind of got was, hey, as long as we can just stay decent, he's our biggest weapon. Well, we still have other pieces. We got Terrence Williams. We have a solid running game behind this really good offensive line. We'll be fine. Once Romo goes out, well, now you're talking about not just a weapon, but the architect for your offense. And now that changes things a little bit. Whether or not it's going to be Brandon Weeden, I know they've been working guys out to try to. They just completed a trade for Matt Castle. It's hard for me to really understand what this team's going to look like. Defensively is really where they're going to have to shine. And I think that was really kind of if you're going to talk about some of the highlights from that Philly game, it's really the defense that was one of the highlights to me because this team was only kind of mediocre on defense. It was really their offense that was so strong and the time possession was so great that the defense was just kind of mediocre. They're about 15th in points allowed per game, and that was good enough. Well, without your starting running, without your best wide receiver, without your quarterback, you're going to have to rely on that defense. And, they've got Randy Gregory will be back. Sean Lee's playing really well for them. Greg Hardy will be back for them in a couple weeks. Like that defense is going to get better. I know Orlando Scandrick is out for the season. He's kind of been their most consistent and best defensive player the last couple of years. But I think they're going to really have to rely on that defense to kind of just eke out these wins. If they can be around 500 when Romo comes back, I think they've got a good shot to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Well, before we get to 2-0 and 0-2, it's interesting. That division is going to be interesting. Some people are speculating that 8 or 9 wins is going to win the NFC East because they don't see any superstar teams, and no one's talking about the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, and it's funny. The Thursday night football literally just started. Washington and the Giants are going to go head up. It's hard to really figure this division out because I thought the Giants were going to be a lot better. Now, they had a ton of injuries in their secondary. They lost corners and safety, so I get that. But having double-digit leads in the second halves of 2 straight games and then losing, you don't expect that out of Tom Coughlin and Eli Manning. You know what I mean? You expect them to know how to not only go up in the game, but maintain that and win those games. So I want to say that that's a blip, that the Giants are going to kind of get this thing together, that it's only been 2 weeks and yada, yada, yada. But, you can't keep losing leads. The coolest thing about the NFL is that it's 16 weeks. So you can panic after like a couple of games because that's an eighth of your season's already gone. You know what I mean? So the Giants, they've got to get more consistent and learn how to win close out games. It's such a weird thing to say for a team that's won Super Bowls, but that's what they've got to do. And for Washington, they're pretty much their entire offseason was all about RG3. Well, RG3's he's going to play. No, he's hurt. Now it's going to be Kirk Cousins. But everything about that, but they're really playing like a team. I think Kirk Cousins he was really good he was 23 or 27, 200 about 200 yards and a touchdown, but no picks. Nothing great, but no picks. Didn't turn the ball over. Maybe he's good enough. Maybe they don't have to have a superstar at the quarterback position. Maybe the rest of that team will be good enough. Now, Deshaun Jackson's also hurt, so they're going to have to deal with their own injuries. But that's kind of the name of the game for the NFL.
Okay, you want to talk about 0-2, 2-0, so go for it, man. Yeah,
so a couple of the surprising 0-2 teams. One, another former Super Bowl winning quarterback that's with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
They're 0-2, and Drew Brees is looking like maybe he's getting a little bit closer to the twilight of his career than people had really thought. He's been just rolling along for a while. Last year, his numbers weren't awesome, but they were still decent. And then this year he's got some rotator cuff injury, and he just doesn't really look the same. Not able to complete those deep throws. And, that offense, which has been Drew Brees and Sean Payton and one of the best for pretty much their entire stint together, has slowed down. And there's some real concerns out in New Orleans. This is a team that I really just enjoy watching mostly because of Hard Knocks. The Texans are 0-2. And you looked at that defense and you thought, man, this defense by itself is going to be good enough to carry it. But they just haven't been able to really get anything consistently going. Brian Hoyer didn't work for them after week 1, so they go to week 2. And Ryan Mallett doesn't really do anything against the Panthers. Now, the Panthers have a good defense, but the Panthers at that time were missing 2 of their best 3 defenders with Star Lotulelei and Luke Kuechly, both out with injury. You would expect that they would be able to move the ball more consistently against the Panthers. And if it weren't for, an interception, that game would have really gotten out of hand. So that's got to be disappointing for them as well. I mentioned Seattle. The Lions, a lot of people's kind of chic pick to do something cool. They're 0-2. And, Matt Stafford, he's kind of the Teflon Don. Nobody ever, he gets the big contract and everyone acknowledges how talented he is. But he never really catches any flack for the fact that he hasn't won anything of any real regard. And he's had the best wide receiver over the past decade in Calvin Johnson. So those are some teams out of all those squads. The Ravens are probably the most surprising that they're 0-2.
Yeah.
It's hard to call it, that's what the NFL is. Cause people are picking them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. And they simply haven't been able to follow through and win any of these games. Now you can't give up on them. If there's a team in this whole bunch that I wouldn't give up on, it'd probably be the Ravens or Seattle, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Nice. Are any 2-0 teams you want to put some spotlight on?
Yeah, well, we talked about the Patriots a little bit. The Jets. Now, that's honestly the Jets being 2-0 is a really big surprise. I know that the Jets-Colts game kind of became about what the Colts weren't doing, but the Jets, their offseason, Geno Smith getting punched, and everybody was like, man, this is going to be another joke of a season. But Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Ryan Fitzgerald with the weapons they have, Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, that really good defense that they have, and they'll be getting their defensive lineman, one of their defensive linemen back from suspension pretty soon. That team is surprisingly, this is Todd Bowles is doing a really good job in his rookie years. That's a fun surprise. I mentioned the Cardinals; they're 2-0. David Johnson, that running back, is an absolute beast. He's a really, if you're going to go fantasy sleeper, he's that kind of guy. He's got home run type of speed and is a powerful back between the tackles. The Panthers, another 2-0
team. I'm going to interrupt for a second. Oh, someone wanted to. I thought someone was going to join in, but he did not join in. Sorry about that. Keep on going. Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, the Panthers, they've just found ways to win ugly. You know what I mean? Like Cam Newton has really done a lot with. He's made a lot of chicken salad. Let me just put it that way. He doesn't have a lot of help. His number one wide receiver, Kelvin Benjamin, went down. He's had a litany of guys at the left tackle position. Pretty much no name. The offensive line has been pretty shaky. They got rid of D'Angelo Williams. You see what he's doing in Pittsburgh. Devin Funchess, the second round pick, is kind of been mediocre. He missed a lot of time, so he's kind of a little bit further behind than he should be for a rookie. He's throwing to Ted Ginn Jr. and Corey Brown. Like these are not at all household names. Greg Olson's really the only guy that he's familiar with whom he is familiar, and you see that rapport that they have. But outside of that, that's pretty much it. So they're kind of winning off of a lot of guile. The Cowboys, they're 2-0, but of all the 2-0 teams, they're kind of the squad that you're thinking is kind of due for a fall just because of the injuries. These are inexplicable things. Everybody was projecting them. I had them as the NFC representative for the Super Bowl, but what are you gonna do? That's football, and that's probably the toughest thing. And a surprising 2-0 team for me, the Denver Broncos. I thought that Peyton was on his way out, and he hasn't played particularly well, but they kind of haven't needed him to. Like their defense has been really, really good with DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller, one of the better quarterback sacking tandems that any team has. And they've kind of just found ways to win without their quarterback, their all-world quarterback, playing particularly well. Maybe that's a really good sign, because if he can start to look a little bit more like Peyton Manning, and he and Kubiak can kind of find this good area where, hey, you're using my system, but you're still playing in the mode that you have for all those years at a Pro Bowl level. Maybe something special be brewing in Denver.
Well, I think with Denver, I don't think that Peyton Manning has to be Peyton Manning. He just has to be Peyton Manning when he needs to be. Look at that last drive against Kansas City. That was vintage Peyton Manning. And basically with that team, it's going to be the defense that carries them. It's not going to be the offense. And
how often have you been able to say that about a Peyton Manning team? The fact that
exactly.
Yeah, so that's great for him. Absolutely. Another surprising team, Atlanta Falcons. Their new coach, formerly the defensive coordinator for Seattle, has come in and really changed that defense around. They had spent all their money and all their assets on offense for a really long time. So you got Julio Jones and Roddy White and Matt Ryan, and you have a plethora of really good guys. But you're starting to see that defense with largely the same cast that was pretty mediocre last year is a lot better. They're flying around. That's, as a Panthers fan, I'm a little concerned about them getting better.
There you go. Well, what are you looking forward to? Any games, any highlighted games coming up this weekend?
I'm really just I've been looking at a lot of the different teams. I think the Bengals, that's another one of those 2-0 teams that you're trying to figure out whether or not they've really got it together. You know what I mean? Like whether or not this is, obviously a very talented team. It's really the quarterback situation and whether or not Andy Dalton's going to be able to carry some of the success into the postseason. Obviously, I'm going to be checking out the Panthers. They've got a game against the Saints, the first divisional game for them, and whether or not they can wrestle the divisional lead away from the Falcons, who are also 2-0.
Yeah, I think that Cincinnati-Baltimore game, very, very big game.
Absolutely.
Big game.
You don't want to see them. If you're a Baltimore fan, you don't want them to go down 0-3 as good as they are and as talented as they may be. If you put yourself in that kind of hole that early, and especially in that division, you might have never be able to come out of it.
I think also, too, Buffalo, Miami going to be interesting.
Everyone's still trying to figure out exactly what you have with those teams, right?
Yep.
Like both, Miami, they end up losing to Jacksonville inexplicably after, Miami is one of those teams that people want to see get better. Ryan Tannehill has presumably gotten better. Okay, you've gotten better. Now you have to win these games. You know what I mean? Like you can't falter when you're supposed to roll. And losing to Jacksonville, I mean, that's a pretty big L to take.
Absolutely. And I think, too, out of Indianapolis at Tennessee, Indy cannot afford to lose another game. And you'll see Andrew Luck and then you'll see Marcus Mariota. And also, of course, Atlanta at Dallas. Very, very, very interesting game. I
would have loved to have seen the Atlanta and Dallas game when both the teams were a little bit close to full strength, mostly with Dallas. But look, this is an opportunity for the Falcons to kind of put the bullseye on their chest. The NFC South, I think, is going to be a little bit better than people are giving it credit for. And if you can get some of these bigger wins, that can serve you well moving forward.
How much is Kam Chancellor coming back to Seattle going to mean to that team?
That's a good question. I think that there's the stuff that he was able to do on the field, which is he mostly covers the middle. He a lot of times because of his size, he's not put on an island or outside the hash marks. But those tight ends and those running backs and the running game, he's the most effective there. There's also what he means to that locker room because, he's one of the leaders of that team. You know what I mean? Like he's able to, kind of keep everybody in line and everyone points to him and looks at him in a leadership role. So I think having him back both on the field and off the field is going to mean a ton to that team.
Excellent. Well, any last takes you want to give us before we sign out, sir?
Sure. Deontay Wilder, the heavyweight champion, the WBC heavyweight champion, is going to be fighting this weekend. It's going to be the first time that a heavyweight title fight has been on NBC since Larry Holmes. He'll be going against Johan Duhas. I'm not 100% sure how to say his name, but it's really less about him and more about this impending fight. It looks like it's going to happen with him and Klitschko. Now, Klitschko has a real test in Tyson Fury next month in Germany. But if both of these guys can get the contenders out of the way, they look for them to have a fight in late next year, maybe September of next year, because that's kind of the big fight. American heavyweight with a devastating right hand who's consistently gotten better. I've had a chance to watch him for a few years now. And at first he was really just a knockout guy, but he's really brought it along. And now it looks like he's a real heavyweight. So just keep an eye out for him.
All right. If people want to catch you, how can they connect with you, sir?
Easiest way is by Twitter at WBHUalum. That's at WBHUalum. I'm always on there talking sports. Or catch he's the producer, I'm the host on podcast. And you can also catch me 9 to 11 Eastern time on the radio, 6:20 a.m., 99.3, 96.5 FM.
Good stuff. Well, it's another edition of the Sports Vibe, and we'll be back next week. I'm Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the Sports Vibe, also host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show, also host and producer of the weekly show on most Sunday nights called Do You Know What Time It Is, where Black men get to speak about current events and news topics. And once a month, you can catch me as host and co-producer of the Good Men Project Show. As always, we'd like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and your solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace, well, keep the faith, and enjoy the NFL this weekend. Bye-bye.